Hi everybody, this is Howard, the Teaser King, coming to you with week 4 of college football. Oh, I just had a great video. Unfortunately, it doesn't. I had internet problems. I don't know what's going on with this internet. All of a sudden it'll say, "Oh, you're disconnected," and then I lose the whole video. So I get a little. I got to redo everything, so it's a little frustrating. What I was saying, basically, let's recap. Trying to learn the teams early in the year, this is week 4, is a little difficult. You get I'm talking more college than the pros, and what happens is in college, you'll watch a game like Stanford Northwestern week 1, and Northwestern beats them 16-6. So you start getting a basis on how good is Northwestern, how good is Stanford. So that leads you to saying, well, Stanford doesn't have a very good offense. I don't know how good their defense is, but their offense is terrible. And then they play USC with a very good quarterback, great receivers, great offense. So you say, USC's 9.5, let's cut them to 3.5. Logic seems good. USC's going to score. Stanford couldn't score. They couldn't get a first down on Northwestern. Obviously, they're not very good. The next week they beat UCF. I think they scored 30 points on them, which is not anything spectacular. So you start going, oh, Stanford's offense very nice. Not very good. They're on the road at SC. They'll score a little, but SC should score a lot on them. And then all of a sudden Stanford wins 41-38 or whatever the score was. Just a second now. Stanford, 41-31. Stanford wins. It's a 72. So you've gone from a 16-6 game to a 41-31 game. Anyway, so as the weeks go on, you get a better bearing of the teams. So now I got, Stanford's really not that bad defensively. It must be Northwestern must be really strong defensively. Look what they did to Duke, 19-10. And Duke's pretty good offensively, although the quarterback looked terrible last week. So you start getting a better flavor. The more statistics you can put in, the more games you can watch, the better you can understand the team, because the teams change every year. Now they have Hogan back, the quarterback at Stanford, but I was never that impressed with them anyway. I thought USC in a big game would win quite handily. By at least, the spread was 9.5, went up to 10. We teased it at 3.5, and you figure all you got to do is win, even if they won by 7. And they were terrible. They never blitzed up the middle, and they let Hogan run on them with a bad ankle. It's terrible coaching. I don't like this Sarkisian at all. He should be fired. But I basically don't see that. So the more you watch, the more you learn. And what I'm looking at now is categorizing these teams, saying, God, Northwestern must have a hell of a defense. Look what they did. So now I'm going, maybe I should just bet Northwestern under instead of trying to mess around with picking the game. So my first thought is pick the game, and my second thought is, well, let's look at the game. If a good defensive team is playing another good defensive team, or a good defensive team is playing a team without a quarterback, there's a lot of those in college where the quarterback's terrible, why don't we go over or under with the game? So that's kind of what I'm looking at, and I kind of tested it out last week, and I was like 35-6 on it. And I played the under in week 1 with Michigan, and I played an over, I think, with Colorado and Massachusetts, and I pushed on a couple of overs in the Tennessee-Oklahoma game. So I'm starting to get a little bit more feel of that. I'm still leery of the really high over. This week there's TCU is playing Texas Tech, and the over-under is 80. Now that seems like an over, but when they make them that high, I kind of stand away from them because I just feel that, I got to go over 74, and logically it should be a 100-point game, but TCU can play defense, and maybe they get a feel, maybe they start running the ball more to keep Texas Tech off the field. All these things go into it when it seems like an obvious over, so I won't play that over. But if it's in the 50s and 60s, I will go over or under at that point. I think those are the best games to really play overs and unders. So with that said, I loved Ole Miss last week. They're going to be in the playoff. They're the best team. They're better than Ohio State. If they played now, they'd beat them. The quarterback's fantastic. Great defense, great passing. And I loved near the end of the game, Ole Miss kept throwing the ball. They said, we can't run on Alabama. We're smart enough to realize that. We can make a nice little throw here, throw there, keep the clock running, win the game. And I loved them spanking it and all the guys on ESPN crying that Alabama lost. And oh my God. Well, give Mississippi credit. I heard one guy say, well, they put up 73 on Fresno State. Who cares? And I'm like, Fresno State, nobody puts 73 points on Fresno State. You watch the whole year. They can play anybody in that league. Nobody's going to put 70 points on them. So I don't know what the guy's talking about. Fresno State's a fairly, this year they're a little down, but they're a good program. I mean, they're not, they're like a Northwestern or a Minnesota, more on the offensive side, but they're a mid-Pac 10, mid-Big Ten team. They're not New Mexico State, so when Ole Miss puts 73 up on them, that's pretty damn impressive. Anyway, so I'm looking at the game first, but then if the over-under really comes out, and I see two unders playing each other, two overs playing each other, then I'm going to look at that as a secondary. And so let's get into the picks this week. We'll go right to Northwestern. They're laying 20.5 at Ball State. Over-under 51. I'm looking going, I can't trust Northwestern to win by 14. They have no offense, and apparently they have this great defense. They're holding Stanford to 6. They hold Duke to 10. So I like under 57 in this one. Ball State's not explosive. They don't have a good quarterback. Northwestern's quarterback's terrible. So they can run a little bit, but they're not wide open Northwestern. They're very much relying on their defense. So I'm playing this game under. And I'll play it with Minnesota, who's another strong defensive team who runs the ball a little bit, who has a terrible quarterback, playing a really strong defensive Ohio team who doesn't have a quarterback. The spread's Minnesota laying 10 and 47. Minnesota beat Kent State 10-7 last week. How are you gonna lay 4 with this team? However, the under looks great. Neither team's going to get over 20-21 here. This will be a very low-scoring game. So I like the Northwestern under 57 with Minnesota under. This teasing it from 47 down to 53. So that's my strong underplay. Baylor is playing Rice, and the over/under is 74, and the spread's 34. And again, I get into, well, Rice put up 24 on Texas. Baylor, now they got to win by 28, but Rice has a fairly good quarterback. Baylor's explosive. We know Baylor's going to score at least 50 points in this game, maybe 60. The over/under is 74, so all I got to do is go to 68. Can Baylor cover 28.5? It's 34.5 the spread. That's 28.5. So they could easily be up 50, but they might be up 50-20. So they're up 30, or maybe it's 50-28. I mean, Rice is scoring. So now it leads you to a little bit of, maybe they don't win by 50 points. I don't see a 50-point win here. But I do see an over 68, because I see Baylor getting at least 50 points on their own. Rice gave up 48 to Texas, so that tells you something right there. So Rice has a bad defense, but can score, and Baylor's got a great offense. Their defense, I like Oakman, he's good, but they'll be able to score on him. Baylor, I think, let up 20-some to SMU, or 25, 30 points. So, and that was like an 85 or 90 point game when they played SMU. So I just like Baylor in the over here against Rice. And I'll give you one more over-under. Let's see. We'll look at tonight's game. Boise's playing Virginia. The over-under is 49. Boise's laying 2.5. Boise's quarterback's out. Virginia has no quarterback. Again, they both have strong defenses. I like this game under 55. Again, it's good defensive teams. Neither team's got a great quarterback. Boise could play, how good's their second quarterback, but even if he's okay, Virginia's a very strong defensive team. So I like Virginia here to play a low-scoring game as they had. They played UCLA. I think it was in the 50s, but it was like 34-16. And UCLA has Rosen and a lot better players than Boise. So I like that game under. A couple of games elsewhere. Eastern Michigan's laying 2.5 to the Army. One of the things I look at is strong dogs and weak favorites. What do I mean by that? Well, a strong dog is, let's say Ole Miss against Alabama. I mean, you got Ole Miss, a great defense with a good quarterback, very strong team, and they're getting points. You like that. Ohio State last year against Oregon, it was a strong dog. Anytime Alabama's a dog, they're a strong dog. So in this game, or I look at a weak favorite. A weak favorite's a team like New Mexico State being favored, East Carolina being favored. Some of these weak teams this year, Georgia State, Texas, San Antonio, like, no, these teams, you can't trust them to win a game. How can they be favored? So I look at Eastern Michigan, and they're laying 2.5 to the Army. Eastern had that one good game against Wyoming, who's a weak favorite, and they put it up last week against Ball State. They lost 28-17. I did have them, and they did cover because I had them +6, +12. The spread went down to 4.5. So if you caught the spread, that's why I suggest a shot for spreads. If you get it at the right spread, you turn a loser into a winner. Army gets 8.5 here. I don't think Eastern is going to blow them out. They could. I mean, they had that one game where they put up 48, but I think Army plays a very tough game. They lost to Connecticut 22-17, and Connecticut is not very good, but they're better than Eastern. I just like Army +8.5 here, just simply because it's very hard to practice against a team like Army, Navy, Air Force, Georgia Tech, because you can't simulate it in practice. And I don't think Eastern's yet ready to be a favorite. They can be a dog. If Eastern was a dog here, I might think about it. But Eastern as the favorite, I can't go along with it. Let's see, one other game. Alright, let's look at the South Carolina UCF game. South Carolina's laying 15 with an over-under of 44. So when you look at this, you go, South Carolina's got no quarterback. They barely score. UCF is very low scoring and a fairly good defense. They lost to Florida International 16-15 their first week. They can't score on Florida International. I look at this as a very low scoring game. I don't want to trust South Carolina laying 9 because this is a team without a quarterback that can barely score. Now, they might switch quarterbacks, which I know Spurrier's doing, and this kid might be Joe Montana. And he could be, but I still like UCF's defense. And we could get burned with it that the kid from South Carolina is Joe Montana. But I think if he was, he'd have been playing already. And he would have been playing against, last week against Georgia. He wouldn't have sat there and not played. So I look at this game going under. It's 44 is the over-under. So I look at this going under 50. Again, it's a new way of thinking. Do I trust South Carolina -9 without a quarterback? No. And even their defense isn't stellar. UCF has no offense and a really strong defense. I can see this game, being 14-10 or something. I can see a very low score here. Just my thoughts. Anyway, that's about it. I just think it's a unique way of looking at it. Now, a team like USC and Arizona State, I'm going to comment on it, but I'm not giving a pick on it. I'm just trying to learn it. USC apparently is this explosive offense. Arizona State against Texas A&M, I saw a top defense. Arizona State's defense is great. Arizona State's quarterback sucked. He couldn't complete a pass against A&M. All they did was blitz him, and the guy he never saw a blitz before. USC, I'm sure, will blitz. That defense is very strong for Arizona State. USC's laying 5.5. They couldn't beat Stanford. Arizona State's defense is much better than Stanford's. USC doesn't show much of a defense, but Arizona State's quarterback sucked against A&M. So here's your quandary. The USC minus 5.5. I probably would take Arizona State in 11.5 if I could trust the quarterback. I don't have enough information on the quarterback to trust him yet. On the other hand, the over/under is 62, it looks like, and I don't know to go over or under on the game. I can't tell because USC's pretty high scoring with apparently a pretty weak defense against Arizona State, who's got this great defense, who maybe the quarterback against USC will light it up. So this is a game I learn, I watch, I see. I'm looking to see how good Arizona State's quarterback is, and that's why I'm not gonna play it. I don't know enough information. Once I see the kid, now if he lights it up and he goes 25 for 29 for 300 yards, then I'll say Arizona State's the team. Anytime there'll be a live dog. USC I don't trust. I don't trust their defense. Yeah, they got a Kessler. They're loaded on offense, but I can't trust their defense. This is a game I'm learning on. So this is what you do sometime. But I'm going to watch it, and I'm looking for the play of the Arizona State quarterback, and I'm looking to see if they're over or unders. My initial guess is this game should go. Probably will go over. I think Arizona State will score because USC's defense is that bad. I think USC scores even though Arizona State's defense is good. I think they score on them. So I think there'll be more offense than defense. Arizona State at home. The over/under is 62, 56. Both teams got to get in the 30s. I think that'll be. It could go either way in this, but it's just a learning game. Just like UCLA, Arizona, I'm going to learn in that. I don't like UCLA laying 3 at Arizona. I wish Arizona was the favorite. I would have taken UCLA, but I don't like UCLA as a road favorite at Arizona. Although UCLA should win that game, but I don't like the number there. Anyway, that's the look at this week. Then I'll take a look as you see and try to mark these teams as over or under teams. And you do it by the scores, and you do it by looking at their defense, and you do it by looking at their quarterback. So if they got a stud quarterback, okay, they're an over team probably. These weak teams are probably over teams, like a UTEP, a Texas State, a Texas San Antonio, Georgia Southern. They tend to have weak defenses and pretty much open offenses. They pretty much run a spread offense, so they throw the ball around, but they can't stop the wind. Those games usually get pretty high scoring. An SMU this year is a big over. I think this Rice is an over. We already know TCU and Baylor are overs. Bowling Green, Memphis, Cincinnati are over teams. So you get a flavor of that, just to keep an FYI on it. All right, everybody. Well, good luck. We're going to keep hitting them. You got to play the percentages. Nobody's going 100%. Nobody's going 0%. It's all in the matchups. Some weeks you have great matchups. You hit them all. That's what I did the first 2 weeks. Week 3 it was a little bit. The matchups weren't there, and I was very proud I stayed away from the big games. The Ohio State, the Michigan State. I was really proud I picked Ole Miss, and the USC game kind of screwed me up a little bit. But basically, the more information you get, this is why we do better in the late half of the year. Now I get a better feel on Stanford, on Northwestern, on Duke, on Kentucky, on all these teams. I see Ole Miss. I never would have saw them before, but the quarterback's unbelievable. So they'll be an over. I think they'll get into the playoff. I think Ole Miss is the best team in the country right now. Clearly, I mean, I don't get Ohio State. They barely beat some weak teams. Why are they number 1? Okay, so the quarterback had a great game against Alabama and Oregon, but not this year. This guy's terrible. So I don't get it. They're not number 1. And it's not like because they won it last year they should stay number 1 until they lose. That's a crock. But we'll see what happens with Ohio State. But my money's on Ole Miss. All right, everybody. Have a great week. Good luck to you. And hang in there. We'll be fine. All right. Take care.